Hi, I'm Paul Kaufman. I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Bar Association's Mock Trial Executive Committee, and I'm coming to you from the Emmy-nominated studios at CCP TV, the Community College of Philadelphia's audiovisual production studio. This programming is brought to you by the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society, and we thank both the Center and CCP TV for their support of Pennsylvania mock trial. This is the second part of our program on district and regional coordinator volunteers, and this is the tips and tricks section of our programming. This is the collective wisdom of what we've pulled together of our years and the years of others we've discussed these issues with, about ways to avoid problems and, frankly, deal with the problems that will come up at your competition. The first thing regards judges. All right. Judges are tricky to deal with. Particularly presiding judges are tricky to deal with because they're used to being presiding judges, and in many cases they wear their robe for a living. That can make them a little bit less amenable to your counsel as to how to run a courtroom. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. First, all of the presiding judges should watch the training video for presiding judges that we have put together that covers a lot of the tips and tricks that they need to know. Second, before you release them to do their job, remind them once again, this is not a real courtroom. Particularly, it is not their real courtroom. It follows mock trial rules, and it follows that when you're dealing with students, you have to behave differently than when you're dealing with professional litigants. For example, they are very likely to know how they would rule on an objection the instant a student is standing up to make that objection. Nonetheless, they have to give the students time to argue out both sides so that it can be scored. And even if they tend to be a somewhat more crabbed jurist when it comes to letting evidence into their own courtrooms, they need to be more flexible with the student's evidence, because the exclusion of too much evidence can really skew a mock trial. And these are things that they need to be reminded about. The same is true for scoring jurors. First off, we have a training for them as well, and they should all be encouraged, if not absolutely required, to watch that. For scoring jurors, the points of emphasis are slightly different. First, we do have some scoring jurors in this competition who tend to give very low scores. That is not especially helpful. First, it skews the results that you're going to be relying upon for tie-breaking. And second, it can do real damage to the self-esteem of the students who are receiving ones or twos. Ones or twos are really hypothetical scores, and generally you're not going to need anything lower than a 5 or so, maybe a 4 in extreme circumstances, to score a high school mock trial round fairly. Those points of emphasis should be stressed to them. It's also important to remind them right before they go in what they are and are not judging. They are judging every aspect of performance, but they are not judging who wins the case. We do our very best to balance the case on the merits every year, but some years we do better than others, and it's important for them to remember that they are judging the individual aspects of performance, not the outcome of the merits of the case. Likewise, it may be very important to remind them that they are not judging manner of dress, facility with English, race, gender, religion, or any of the other common and suspect characteristics. They are also not judging the theatrics per se. They are judging the effectiveness of the presentation. That can be an important distinction to remind them right before they go in. They are judging the skill at lawyering. They're judging preparation on all parts, including the witnesses. They are absolutely judging how students respond to something that's unexpected or new, and how the students create, craft, and present their theory of the case. All of these things are reflected in one way or another, both in their training materials and in the bench brief, and frankly on the score sheet itself. One area that has caused some confusion in the past has been the presence of a tiebreaker box on the score sheet. Now, I hope you all know we don't allow ties in Pennsylvania mock trial. So if the judge reaches an arithmetic tie at the end, he or she needs to go back and change one of the scores, either higher or lower, to break that tie. For this reason, some coordinators provide the judges with scratch score sheets so that their changes are not reflected in a visible way for the students on the final score sheet. In any case, even though there are no ties permitted, there is a tiebreaker box, and that is because you will find that your judges tend to be fairly bad at math. And sometimes what they think is an untied ballot is in fact a tied ballot. Those judges should be instructed to fill in the tiebreaker box in every case, in case there is such a tie. They should fill it in with the team that they believe won based on their ballot, and that should be the same team that has the most points on their ballot. I know that that sounds slightly ridiculous, but we've had issues with it in the past. If a scoring judge recognizes someone from a school, either from this year's competition or past competitions, they should let you know that immediately. Not all recognition is a conflict, and you should read the conflict rules carefully. Just knowing who a team is does not constitute a conflict, but it is something that you should probably know about so that you can help make that determination rather than finding out about it afterward when it's too late for you to have any influence on the outcome. Remember that you as the coordinator will be responsible for setting up the courtroom, or at least ensuring that the students have done so, and for making sure that at the end of the trial the courtroom is returned to the exact state it was in before you began. You will find that there is no faster way to lose courtrooms than to have your students leave them messy and not catch them. You want to bring with you all of the materials that they will need, which is to say the scoring judge's scoring sheets, a copy of the bench brief for the presiding judge, 2 certificates for each team, 1 best advocate and 1 best witness, that they can exchange them at the end of the round, and 1, 2, 3 timekeeping sheets, depending on how your district or region is doing that. One question that we get quite a bit has to do with accommodation and scheduling. Whenever possible, we ask you to try to maximize participation in this competition. And that means that if a team declares a conflict late, and you can accommodate that conflict without hurting your competition's integrity, you do your best to do that. Certain accommodations, however, must be made. We do accommodate for any claim of disability. We do accommodate for any claim of religious conflict. Those are things you need to be aware of, and if you have any questions about those or about how to do those kinds of accommodations, what modifications you may want to make to the rules to permit, for example, sign language interpretation for a student who is hard of hearing, please don't hesitate to contact the executive committee so that we can work with you to create an accommodation that will work for your team and will help going forward in the competition should that team advance. You should be striving for diversity among your jurors. And here we're not just talking about race, but we're talking about other factors too. It's good to have a mix of races, genders, ages, and levels of experience with mock trial. A heterogeneous jury will give the clearest result in favor of the team that would have appealed to the same kind of cross-section that would be found in a real jury. Remember, again, as we discussed before, it is the number of ballots or score sheets won, not the total number of points won in the aggregate, that determines who advances from a given round. If you have a team that has won 2 of the 3 jurors, even if they've scored less points when you add up all 3, the team that has won 2 is the winner and advances. Try as much as possible to incorporate the coaches in any difficult decisions that you make. One issue that we have had in the past is when coaches aren't advised that there's something going on, they tend to respond negatively after the fact. However, if you have, for example, a very marginal juror conflict, somebody who recognizes someone from a previous year, and you go to the coaches beforehand and you say, look, this is what we're doing, this is what the decision is there any problem with that? That can save you a lot of headache later from those coaches complaining. Likewise, if you have a difficult decision to make, a close conflict, or if, for example, you couldn't put on a round because you don't have enough jurors who are not conflicted, and you still want to put that round on that day, you need to clear a conflict with the coaches. That's something that you should discuss with them in full and get their buy-in. We have found that most of our coaches, and I do stress most of our coaches, are reasonable folks who, if they're consulted, will help you reach a decision that is right for the competition. However, if those same coaches aren't advised of it and only get informed later, potentially after their team is lost, they may have a different reaction. And so we suggest talking things through with them ahead of time as an excellent way to save yourself headaches. With that said, there will be headaches. From time to time in this competition, you will find either a coach who won't agree to something or a judge who has done something while you were in a different room that fundamentally creates a problem with the competition. For example, we've had presiding judges change the time limits of our competition during the competition round to accommodate one thing or another. That is a problem. And if you have that kind of a problem, you may get an appeal. The appeals process is laid out for you carefully in Rule 9 of the State Rules of Competition. And if you get an appeal, I would suggest that you take a minute to reread that just to recenter yourself in that set of rules as you hear it. It is important that you document everything when it comes to an appeal, because your decision may be further appealed to the executive committee, and we would like to be in the strongest possible position to review it. So take your time, write down each side's case, write down any investigation that you did, anything that you learned in that investigation, specific things that people said to you, particularly coaches, can be very significant, and ultimately render a decision that reflects what you think is the fairest outcome. And I don't want to beat on our presiding judges. We've had issues in the past where teams have conversed about things over social media in ways that constituted scouting under our rules, and a penalty needed to be assessed. In that case, we were very lucky. We had a regional coordinator who took the time and had carefully documented both the social media posts and everything done to investigate it. And that, I think, made for a more comfortable feeling among the coaches that the issue had been carefully considered, and certainly facilitated the ultimate appeal to the mock trial executive committee. At the end of any appeal process or any protest process, you need to let them know that your decision can be further appealed to the mock trial executive committee or to the regional coordinator if you're a district coordinator. That process is laid out in Rule 9. There are time limits in that process to avoid this encumbering your competition. And you have our word that if the issue is appealed to the mock trial executive committee, we will take it up promptly and resolve it immediately so as to avoid hindering your ability to continue your competition to the greatest degree possible. At the end of districts and regionals, of course, are states. The state competition is in Harrisburg every year, and we would welcome you to come and help judge it, to come and participate in administrating it and everything else. We love our district and regional coordinators, and we would love an opportunity to see you some more. If you stay for both nights of that competition, you may have accommodations available. We'll be able to pay for a hotel room for you, so you don't need to worry about that. Let us know if that's something that you'd like to do. And of course, let us know if there's something you think that we missed in our handbook, in our rules, or in this video. We would love to be able to make this competition even better, and the heart and soul of this competition are the district and regional coordinators who make all of this possible. Thank you for listening. We hope that you will reach out to us if you have any issues. We hope you will have a wonderful time. We cannot thank you enough for your volunteer service to this wonderful competition. Thank you.